Hey everyone, welcome back to Rotten Egg Stories, where we dive into some of the juiciest Reddit confessions and give them the thoughtful, empathetic, and sometimes tough love they deserve. Today's story is one that I know will hit home for so many of you. It's about friendship, boundaries, and those moments when you realize that maybe, just maybe, someone you've poured so much into doesn't value you the way you deserve. Let's get into it.
My 28F colleague, 30F, didn't invite me to her wedding, and it's completely unraveled our friendship. One of my work colleagues is a lifelong friend of mine. We lived on the same street growing up, went to the same school, and when I needed a job after graduating university, she made me aware of an opening at the company she worked at. I applied, got the job, and it's been quite a few years since, and we still work together. It's a pretty small company and quite male-dominated, so after we started working together, we became really close. We take all our lunches together, we regularly stop by each other's desks for a chat, and we quickly became known round the office as inseparable. A year ago, she got engaged to her long-term partner, and I was ecstatic for her. She had a really tough time a couple of years ago, 2 family deaths close together, and I did everything I could to be a good friend to her while she was in the worst stages of grieving. She cried with me daily for weeks, and I made sure she knew I was always available to listen. I also took about a third of her workload off her voluntarily, so she could take days off when she needed to without stressing about her work building up. So now that life has gotten better for her, and she's always smiling and excited, it's really nice to see. Ever since she got engaged, as expected, she's talked a lot about wedding plans, especially at our lunches. I know basically every detail. When she booked her venue, she was really excited, but she refused to tell me where it was going to be, saying that she wanted it to be a surprise when the invitations came out. The wedding is 2 weeks away now, and I've long since stopped waiting for my invitation to show up. I know when they were sent, because she told me all about delivering them and shows me every day the gifts people have started to buy off their registry. I feel silly for saying it, but the more I think about it, the more hurt I feel that I haven't been included. It's a big wedding, and she has invited some other people from work that I didn't know she was even close to. She hasn't mentioned the reason why I'm not invited, and at this point, I feel too awkward to ask. I guess it's just a slap in the face because I really thought we were close, and now I'm realizing that maybe we're not. The trouble is, since all this, I've started to really examine our friendship, and I'm wondering if she even cares about me at all. I can think of 100 examples of where I've helped her work through decisions, listened to her vent, stood up for her when she's had issues with colleagues, etc. Even tons of little things, like if anyone brings in cake and she's out of the office, I always save her a slice so she doesn't miss out. But I can't remember a time that she did anything for me in return. Now, when she talks to me, I've realized she doesn't even listen to me. When I'm finished talking, she just carries on with what she was saying before, almost as if I'd never spoken at all. If we're ever talking about me or something I've been doing, she never has anything to say. She just kind of nods and then switches the conversation back to herself. I'm starting to think she couldn't care less about me. She just likes having someone around who she can talk at, and whoever that person is doesn't really matter to her. I've invested so many years into this friendship, it's really cut me deep. I feel used. It's also made being at work incredibly lonely, because she was my only friend. I've stopped having lunch with her, and any time she tries to chat, I politely bring the conversation to a quick end and go back to work. She doesn't appear to have even noticed. I do still wish her well. I'm still glad for her that life has turned around, and she's so happy, but I'm a bit lost. I'm not sure if I'm being too harsh because I'm hurt, or if I even have the right to feel hurt in the first place. As I know, weddings have a finite number of guests, and you have to leave people out that you would invite in an ideal world. But I'm not sure there's any way back from this either. Has anyone else had a similar experience? Am I being unreasonable or overdramatic? Should I just let the dust settle and see how I feel then?
There's a lot to unpack here, and thankfully, the Reddit community came through with some insightful comments. Let's take a look at the top 3. A user says,
"Why don't you ask her why you didn't get an invite? If you thought of her as one of your close friends, seems like it would be worth the effort."
Straight to the point. Sometimes the simplest advice is the hardest to follow. Confrontation can feel intimidating, but it might be the only way to get clarity. PTWA says,
I think the people who have suggested talking to her about the invite have the right idea. But because of the other issues you mentioned, mainly the seeming lack of reciprocity and care, I wanted to mention something additional. I have no idea if this is what is happening with this person, but something I've slowly come to realize over the past few years is that, due to my nature, some people come to see me as a kind of attention and care utility, like just open the tap and you'll get a pretty good listener and someone who can be counted on to really try to be helpful and empathetic. Because I am so reliably this, and because I do this right off the bat, regardless of how I'm treated, two things often happen. A certain type of person realizes that this is a service I provide, that they don't have to do anything more than activate. Consciously or they realize I do this regardless of what I'm given. So they realize they don't have to use energy to be reciprocal with me. I do this automatically and without ever evaluating if the other person has earned this level of attention and care. Now, part of why I did this is because who wants relationships to be transactional? And if I am a generous person, doesn't it require me to live my own values regardless of what I'm given? Well, I've started to realize that there has to be some middle ground. It doesn't have to be transactional, and I'm going to continue to be a generous person who wants to provide a lot of deep attention and care. But I need to make sure I'm not burning up that energy on people who can't help me renew it by returning some attention and care back to me. Okay, that's a lot about me. I'm sorry. But I just see in your description of what you've now realized if this might be a mechanism at work with this person and in your life. And if so, I've realized a byproduct of this dynamic is that this kind of person, in addition to not feeling a need to reciprocate, per the above, also never feels the need to, for lack of a better word, do anything to earn my friendship. So I could see this kind of person seeing their invitations as currency to spend, to increase intimacy or impress someone they want to cultivate a relationship with. But since you're already on board with providing hot and cold running care and attention, she doesn't need to spend an invitation on you. Something I've had to do with some of these relationships is just reframe them. I need to not think of this person as someone who can give me the kind of empathetic warmth and concern I might like. But they might be fun. They might be interesting, or they might help the workday go by faster. But I no longer expect them to meet certain emotional needs, and I also, frankly, have put a bit of a limit on the hot and cold running care I was providing. Not punitively, but as self-protection. And usually they don't seem to even notice. So I was wringing myself out for what? Exactly? Anyway, I hope I haven't gone too far afield of your original issue. Just some things that the additional details really made me think of in my own life.
This one hit me hard. It talks about being an attention and care utility. Someone who gives and gives without expecting anything in return. Does that resonate with you? Sometimes it's about recognizing that being generous doesn't mean burning yourself out for people who don't pour back into you. Tie-dye Socks shares,
I had a similar situation, sort of. I was best friends with a guy since we were 13. He had some success in his life, and we remained very close. He ended up dating a woman who was pretty famous. A short time after he started dating her, I found out from my mother's friend, who didn't know that I didn't know, that they were engaged. She had heard about it on the news or from some website. I looked it up on my phone and found out they had been engaged for 2 weeks. I still sucked it up and congratulated him. I was very upset, but kept it to myself because I didn't want to ruin the happy time for him. He talked to me about the wedding and how it was going to be very small, in her home state. Only immediate family. I joked I was disappointed that I wouldn't get to see him get married. Years earlier, he had told me I would be a groomsman when, if he ever did, but that I understood why they would want to keep it small. Months later, they get married. I see pictures on different websites and his sister and mother's FB pages. There were well over 100 people present at that wedding. Standing up next to him was his college roommate, obviously not an immediate family member, and my heart broke. Then it hit me. Our friendship had been one-sided for years, and I didn't even notice or cared to notice. When it was his birthday, I would call and wish him a happy birthday. On my birthday, I wouldn't hear from him, or I would hear, but he would make no mention that it was my birthday. Not finding out about his engagement and not being invited to his wedding opened my eyes. After that, I stopped making an effort, and he seemed to notice and stopped making one in return. About 2.5 years ago, he emailed me saying he didn't know where the friendship went, but would I help him with a new TV project he was working on. I used the excuse that I was too pregnant, to give it 100% of my time. He didn't congratulate me or anything. That sealed the deal for me. My advice to you is to ask your friend what's up. My guess is that this friendship is one-sided like mine was, but either way, you'll have some closure to the friendship. Don't wait years to get that closure, because it will eat away at you.
Closure is such an underrated thing, isn't it? It doesn't always mean fixing the friendship. It might just mean making peace with letting it go. This story speaks to something so many of us have experienced: the heartbreak of realizing that a friendship isn't as mutual as we thought. Here's what I want to say to the OP and anyone else who feels this way. First, your feelings are absolutely valid. You've poured so much into this friendship over the years. Not just time, but emotional energy, kindness, and loyalty. When someone you've been so close to doesn't invite you to an event as monumental as their wedding, it's natural to feel hurt. It's not dramatic or unreasonable. It's a sign of how much you cared about the connection. But it's also important to acknowledge that this hurt isn't just about the wedding. It's about the bigger picture of your friendship. From everything you've shared, it's clear that you've been an incredible friend to her. You've supported her through some of the hardest moments of her life, shouldering her workload when she needed it, listening to her vent, and making sure she knew she had someone in her corner. That kind of unwavering care is rare, and it's something you should feel proud of. But here's the thing. Relationships should be a two-way street. It's not about keeping a mental ledger of who did what, but there has to be some level of reciprocity. And from what you've described, it seems like that balance might have been missing for a long time. When you step back and evaluate your friendship, it's okay to ask yourself, has this person shown me the same kind of care and respect I've shown them? You mentioned realizing that she doesn't listen when you speak, that she doesn't engage with your life or your feelings the way you engage with hers. That's a tough realization, but it's also a moment of clarity. It's not selfish to want your relationships to be mutually fulfilling. It's a basic need for emotional health. Second, while it's tempting to avoid confrontation, and I get it, because these conversations can be so uncomfortable, a gentle and honest conversation might be exactly what you need to get clarity. And let me be clear, this isn't about getting an apology or forcing her to justify her choices. It's about understanding where you stand and giving yourself the closure you deserve. You don't have to approach it with anger or accusations. A simple, heartfelt question like, "Hey, I noticed I wasn't invited to your wedding, and it made me wonder about our friendship. Did I do something to upset you?" can open the door to a deeper understanding. If she's receptive and willing to have an open dialogue, you might uncover something you didn't expect. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, or maybe her guest list was tighter than you realized. But if she brushes it off or deflects, that's also an answer, and it's one you can use to make decisions about how much energy you want to invest in this friendship moving forward. Finally, if it turns out that the friendship is one-sided, don't be afraid to take a step back. I know this is easier said than done, especially when you've been close for so many years. But sometimes stepping back isn't about cutting someone out of your life entirely. It's about protecting your energy and reframing the relationship. Maybe she's not the close confidant you thought she was, but that doesn't mean you can't maintain a surface-level, work-friendly relationship. Let her be the person you chat with casually at the office, without putting in the emotional labor of being her go-to support system. And here's the most important part. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It's necessary. You deserve friendships that pour into you, not just ones that take from you. By stepping back, you create space for relationships that are reciprocal, supportive, and nourishing. One last thing to consider. It's okay to grieve the friendship you thought you had. That feeling of loss is real, and it deserves to be acknowledged. But once you've processed that grief, let it become an opportunity to realign your relationships with your own values. Ask yourself, what kind of friendships do I want in my life? What kind of friend do I want to be? And what kind of friends do I want to surround myself with? It's okay to outgrow people. It doesn't mean you failed, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means you're evolving, and your relationships need to evolve with you. Thanks so much for watching and letting me share this story with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do in this situation? Leave a comment below and let's start a conversation. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, you deserve amazing things.